Yeah, this is the most interesting, intriguing job I've ever had, because every case you go out on is a life story. And a lot of times when I'll be with a family, and if I'm going to release the body to a funeral home, which is most of the time that's the case when someone dies in their homes, or depending on the circumstances. But if it's a natural death, I'm going to release the body to the funeral home. I stay there with the family until the funeral home arrives. And sometimes, a lot of times, my job is just to sit and listen. And people want to talk about their loved one. And I find to me it's a privilege that they'll share their experience and their love for this person with me. And I think that a lot of times the most important thing I can do is just listen.
So I've seen a few documentaries and also on some TV shows that I see coroners like testifying in court. Have you ever done that, or anybody here ever done that?
Oh, knock on wood, I have not. But you know, when leads me into the aspect of when I'm done with my investigation, in particular, when I do investigation, I always try to follow the same protocol and steps each time so I can be consistent. I take note of the environment it's in. I take the temperature. I use a digital voice recorder hung around my neck and a headlamp spotlight on my head, so my hands are free, and then I just narrate the procedures of what I'm doing. I always start at the top of the head and work down to the bottom of the feet, and try to follow the same protocol every time. And then when I'm all done with all of this and we get back here, I have to fill out a report and I have to write a narrative. So you have to be a proficient writer, composer to do this job. And I had some advice from a person a while back, and I always try to write my narrative report as if I'm sitting on a witness stand. And you have to make it so people can understand. So if I write my report like I was speaking to a jury. You know, can you understand what I did and what I saw and what the facts are and what the physical characteristics are of injuries, et cetera, things like that, whatever the case may be.
Have you ever had to deal with like a missing person?
We have had unidentified decedents before, and there's some national organization, NamUs, a couple others that aren't coming to my mind right now, but we will use them. We also, through law enforcement, has access to a program called iLeads, which anyone who has ever been in the system there's a record of it. We'll use that, and then a lot of times it's just asking questions, finding does anybody know if this person had any family. Probably one of the most things that make me most uncomfortable is when I can't find next of kin. I never relax until we find family for the people that we are. And there's some cases we have a room here where we have close to 30 cremains of they're considered indigent. We weren't able to find any family, and that's always an open case. It's an incomplete. We don't have closure until a person's loved one is notified or informed.
So for the last question here, as I had mentioned earlier about the military and how I'd like to join, I'm leaving in 18 days, which is pretty soon. What advice would you give me? Like, should I take my college classes during the military, or should I wait till I get out, or what should I do my degree in?
Well, Bethany, nobody knows you better than you. But first of all, let me say, the fact that you're going into the Navy, that's awesome. Thank you for your service. I truly respect and admire that. But that's an excellent question. And looking at it from my standpoint, which is no better or worse than anybody else's, but if you're wanting to do this kind of work, I would take as much medical training as you could in the military. As far as criminal justice, things like that, that's not bad, but if you're thinking of going into law enforcement, I've had my son for a long time. He wanted to be a police officer since he was little, and went all through high school thinking that's what he wanted to do. So I have a lot of friends who are detectives and police officers, so when I sought their advice, they told me something I hadn't thought of, and that was, this kind of work, make sure whatever training you get is transferable to another field as well. And so what the detectives and other guys and women told me was, get your training in a broader spectrum. For example, if you just focus on criminal justice or law enforcement, everything you need to know, you'll get the basic training in the academy. Because there are cases, you don't know if you can do this job until you do it. So if you focus and just pinpoint a specialized type of training, and then you get into the field, and after a month or 6 weeks, you say, wow, this isn't what I thought it'd be. Because it's not everyone can do it. It takes a special person to be a law enforcement officer. It takes a special person to be a death investigator. And so I would get all the training you could that's provided by the military, but make sure it's broadened out to where you're not focused too much. Especially when you're looking at being in either law enforcement or a coroner investigator or pathologist, because there's no way to know whether a person can do this job until they do it. It's one thing to see it on TV, one thing to see this, but until you get in and do it, it's best to prepare for other options as well. And I think in most fields that's not bad advice. Give yourself the best opportunity so that when you come to a fork in the road, you have several forks that you could go down to have a successful life.
That was probably some of the best advice I've ever got. So thank you for helping me out today.
It's
That
a
was
pleasure.
amazing.
Again, thank you for your service.
Okay.